Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our continuing series, the Unported playlist, where we take a look at now 21 of my favorite unported arcade games of all time. And today we're taking a look at Lucky and Wild, released in 1992 by Namco, and it is a very unusual game. It is a hybrid driving game and a light gun shooting game, and it has a lot of vibes of Chase H.Q, where your ultimate goal is to be able to apprehend the criminal at the end of the stage. And it definitely has a real Starsky and Hutch kind of buddy cop vibe to it. But as far as the game's concerned, it's super unique, it's super entertaining, and it's one that I definitely recommend you guys check out. Because Namco is great at these type of games, and it has a huge point-blank vibe to it. A lot of the sprites, a lot of the art style look a lot like Point Blank, and considering you do have a shooting mechanic, it's no surprise that Namco would have made this game to try to hybridize those two really popular arcade genre games to be able to bring Lucky and Wild to you. Now, as far as why wasn't it ported, this would have been great on something like the PlayStation 1 with the Gun Con, because Point Blank was so popular. And I love this kind of Blues Brother feel here, where you just drive right into a mall, you can hit carts, you can knock things over, there's a lot of environmental damage. It has a really nice sense of scale to it. It doesn't feel the fastest game, it doesn't feel like you're driving as fast as it says you do, but having to avoid the projectiles, driving through buildings, missing trains, everything feels great, and I absolutely love the game for it. Now, I think it would have made a good home platform release, but my question is, how would you have controlled it with a light gun? And I think maybe that's what Namco struggled when they thought about porting the game home. Now you see here we have our first boss battle, and you don't get a damage meter for your bosses. You just kind of have to go off that visual of how damaged their car is. And you are on a timer, so you can fail a stage and continue on to the next one, just like in Chase HQ, so it's definitely still a thing. If you run out of time, you don't necessarily have to stop playing. If you die, you can put some more quarters in. It works really well like that. And I do like these slightly seedy little cutaways in between stages where you can upgrade your car or otherwise repair it. It's got a really nice just vibe to it in between actually having the combat, so that you just get a little bit more flavor and flair for the game itself. As far as the game is concerned though, it is becoming increasingly very rare, and that's all down to how the cabinet was set up. There is a steering wheel mounted to the cabinet, and there's two guns as well. So you could play a two-player game where the first player controlled the car and shot, and then the second player was just your gunman, or you could play it in a one-player configuration with your left hand doing the steering and your right hand doing the shooting. But if you know anything about arcade cabinets, they aren't treated very well. They're public amusements. Light gun games get beat up all the time. Driving games get beat up all the time. Put the hardware together, and I'm sure these broke near constantly. And that's why I think, even I would have loved a port of this game, it would have been really difficult to make work at home. I think it would have only been a two-player game, because player one could have used the control pad on the PlayStation 1, and that's just the platform I assume it would have been to, because Point Blank went on the PlayStation 1 as well. But player one could have moved the car, and player two could have controlled the gun con. I mean, maybe if you were skilled, you could use your left hand to be able to move the directional pad left and right, and your right hand to shoot. I think you could have pulled it off, but I could see where it was just really difficult to imagine how this game would have functioned at home, which is really disappointing because it's an awesome game and feels like a really true companion piece to Point Blank, which is definitely my favorite light gun series of all time. And I appreciate Lucky and Wild for what it is. It's taking two different popular arcade genres and it's putting them together to make a new game. And that's not something that you get that often. A lot of times light gun games are on rails and the only thing you have to control are the bullets themselves. So I do appreciate how you have to actually manage two things at once in this game. It makes it quite challenging, and it takes a long time to get good at it, but once you actually get the feel for the game and you're able to move the car left and right, avoid obstacles, all while shooting your enemies, it feels awesome. Granted there, they got away, I lost that stage. But what you do is going to watch the next stage from start to finish so you can get some sense of the soundtrack, and I will come back and close out Lucky and Wild, but I just want you guys to enjoy some of the soundtrack and the other effects of the game. But I'll be back in just a second. Enjoy the stage. And again, the boss character got away. And that is one of my complaints about the game, because I always play these on default difficulty to see what the arcade experience would have been like versus turning them down to easy to be able to better capture the footage. Because I always like to know what these games felt like at their default settings. And my one issue with Lucky and Wild is that running out of time is just something that's going to happen very often. There's a lot of stuff going on the screen at once. There's a lot of things to manage, obstacles to avoid, enemies to shoot. So it really is easy to get yourself stuck in the middle of a stage, take a little bit too much time to get to the boss, and then from there, the chances of you running out of time really grow. And that's a bit disappointing. I guess you could turn the difficulty down on the game to enjoy it more, but it's something that I would say is a complaint. But now that we're going through this canyon, you have all these dynamite sticks on parachutes and you're trying to attack that helicopter. When the game is moving fast, when there's a lot of action on the screen, it just feels absolutely awesome, and it's definitely something that you should check out if you like this genre of games. If you enjoyed Chase H.Q, if you enjoy light gun games, you're definitely going to enjoy playing this. If you really want to get crazy, you could pick up a Lucky and Wild arcade PCB, and you could wire in your own driving controls and XY coordinate gun. It would not be an easy project, but it's definitely something that is achievable. Maybe someday I'll try it if I can find a board for a cheap price, because I have converted the Hyper Neo Geo 64 games over to be able to use home controls for driving, so it's definitely possible. I don't think I'd want to do it, I think it'd be very difficult, but it's definitely something that if you love the game and you can't find an original cabinet, that you could pull off. But as far as the entire game's concerned, it just has something for everybody, and I really do love the sprite scaling in this game. The buildings have scale, the cars have scale, everything really feels great. And I think Namco did a great job at that, and it definitely has that Namco graphic vibe to it. If you played a lot of Namco games, home games, and arcade games, they have a certain visual style to them that looks unlike anything else that people were doing at home or arcades, and it's just one that I really enjoy. And I know I've mentioned Point Blank a few times in this video, but it has that same graphical style that I just really appreciate. So I think their artists did an excellent job in being able to make these games. And it's challenging without feeling too cheap, and I'm sure if you turn the difficulty down it would be a little bit easier, but even playing for the capture, trying to drive and manage the gun at the same time can become difficult. But once you get good at it, it just feels so natural that the game is definitely worth checking out. And I definitely recommend everybody do so, because it's one of those games, it gets mentioned in some circles as being a great game that never made it home, but it's not something that you're going to see pop up on every list if you just Google best arcade games that never got ported of all time. It's more of a deep cut, and that's what I enjoy talking about on these episodes. Not just the most common arcade games that weren't ported home, but some of those more fringe, deeper cut games that are definitely worth checking out. You just haven't heard about them yet. But short of that, that is Lucky and Wild, this really weird hybrid light gun shooting driving game, crazy frantic action. Definitely 100% recommend checking it out. It's very easy to emulate. You don't need a lot of system power to be able to do it, and it's just a fun time. And if you do emulate it and you do have a second person next to you, it gets even better, because I have tried this in 2-player mode, even though I didn't do it for the capture, and when one person can focus on the driving and the other person focuses on the shooting, the game definitely opens up. But we really appreciate you guys watching this. If you could do us a huge favor, go down below and hit like, subscribe. It does take us a lot of time to make each one of these episodes, so your support definitely helps us out. Short of that, we will be back on Tuesday and Friday with more episodes in our other series, and we'll be back next Sunday with another episode in the Unported playlist series. But thanks so much for watching. We got the big bad, and we have beaten the game. That was Lucky and Wild. We hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.